the only peace I find is a future that never happened. One where I, Paul Atreides, was never born. I created the future until it created me. But I see a narrow way, a path that might have been. What if my mother had obeyed her orders and given birth to a girl? Everything would change. Dr. Yue exposed before his betrayal. A world where my father lives. House Atreides surviving the Battle of Arrakeen. Sardaukar deployed to protect the spice melange. A war of assassins spreading across the planet. Fremen exterminated. No Muad'Dib. No Lisan al-Gaib. No Kwisatz Haderach. All of my visions lead to horror. Except for this one. This one leads to you.
Welcome to the demo of Dune Awakening, where it has a benchmarking system in it that's pretty robust, as well as a character creation that has a little bit of kind of a pre-story for the game. So we're going to go right into the benchmarking, because I think that's important for people to know. Will the game be able to run on your rig? This computer I'm testing on is a 7800X3D, 64 gigs of RAM, with a 4070 Ti. Not the Super, just the regular 4070 Ti. I think it's at 113% power on the settings. There are 3 benchmarks. So this is the 1080p with DLSS running, and you'll note that the frames in the top left are like 150 to 200 plus, and they're just very high. And there's 3 different settings that the game is trying to show you. So this is the player base, then it will be doing a city style area that has multiple groups of NPCs / players, I guess they're trying to simulate, as well as a final, I would call it pre-rendered, but it's the desert with a very fun surprise. Now, out of the 3, it seems like when you go into the player base in that first benchmark, that tends to give you a pretty good idea of how it's going to go. All the swirling parts and pieces that are attached to the different machines and processing devices inside the base. Seem to put a load onto the computer. Now, these loading screens are between the different areas in the simulation and benchmarking system, I should say. And you'll note that this is the cityscape area. You will note, you take a close look at the lighting and reflections and shadows, because DLSS, FSR, or TSR, all those fun things, they all have some, I don't know, artifacting is not the right word, but they have a feel to them and they change the dynamics. Lighting is currently set to performance over quality. So the global illumination is set to, by default, is set to performance. I do have a test later on in these sets, if I remember right, that has the quality setting. It didn't seem to change things much. You will see there is significant differences though when you take DLSS off. This is the last one. You'll see one of the sandworms here. Note the spaceship in orbit. And the ornithopter flies incredibly too close to but that's how it is. So it just feels like the desert here, I'm sure it's optimized because it's probably a big part of the game, goes without saying, but you'll note that it has the highest part right there, the sandworms area. other than getting to meet these fun folks, I think there's a lot of things that we can do. You will note that I can change the graphics. So I switched over to 4K on the 4K monitor I'm on. So this run is in 4K with DLSS running. Again, note the lighting, shading. They're almost just as important as each other. Reflections, things like that. Is this something you can tolerate? I do have motion blurring turned off. It's just a preference of mine across every game I play. But overall, I think that the DLSS implementation, at least on these initial benchmarks, looks pretty good to me. It looks good enough. Note that door, the reflections of the lights against it. Obviously, these are hand-picked to be used as benchmarks, but it goes without saying, we'll see. You'll note these loading screens again. This is also an important part of the free demo to test for yourself. Can you tolerate these loading screens in different places? If the game has these loading screens when you enter cities or enter your player base area and such, you know, it will be instanced. Note the lighting's a little rough above. Looks like that neon effect. It ain't quite as bad as FSR's implementation of like tech lighting, I guess you'd call it, high-tech looking lighting, but it's a little rough. You know, that orb struggling, that hologram in the middle of the bones. But the lighting on the floor looks solid. The smoke effects into the light look good. Even the bar mini effects look great. It's a beautiful game, honestly. I think this is doing a pretty good service to Dune. And that was something I was nervous about. In the third benchmark, again, I saw very little difference between any of them. It seems like this is pretty pre-rendered, unfortunately. I hope I'm wrong. Yeah. You can look at the results at the top there. You can pause it if you'd like, and well over 108 average, that kind of thing. Lowest in the 90s. The code for the blade that you get for doing this pre thing is wake-the-sleeper. So if you don't pick that up, that is the code when the full game gets released. They're giving it like a little freebie to try to encourage people to try out creating a character and going through these modes. Now, this is 4K without DLSS support. It took a little bit of work to get this. It seemed to keep glitching even though I confirmed results to get the DLSS off. But you'll note that frame rate in the top left, and you don't even have to look at that. You can literally look at the shuddering of some of the stuff going on in the character movement throughout these. And that's not me being an audiophile. I mean, literally the camera is shuddering as it's moving through the frames. You know, I always think back to audiophiles talking about the feel of something or whatever. You can literally see it in this. The performance is different. Also, those little symbols, those are my recording symbols that are appearing in the center of the screen, top center, and then they go back to the bottom right like they should. It suggests to me that perhaps this demo was rigged up for 1440 or 1090, or you know, your 1080p, that kind of thing, and then it's upscaling to 4K or changing to 4K every time it goes to a loading screen. By default, when I booted it up on this 4K monitor with this system, it did actually go to 1080p. Which was a little weird. Because with DLSS in 4K, it actually looks pretty good, like you just saw. And I led the 4K section with that for a reason. That looked good. This does not. Although this is the raw card trying to do its best with the ultra settings. All these tests are in ultra across the board on the settings. And again, this is kind of proving my point about the desert scene being the best optimized. It's almost hitting 60 here, almost double what it was dealing with in the others, depending on which frames we're looking at. So, a little rough around the edges. But do know the DLSS was off, which is not what is defaulted to. I did want to throw that in because I know some people are purist about not having fake frames, not having DLSS or other types of upscaling technologies. It's very rough, at least with a 4070 Ti. And that's running with a 7800X3D, as well as 64 gigs of RAM, just as a reminder. Oh, and this is all, of course, on an SSD. I think it's a 980 Pro Samsung. So, the weak link, obviously, is the graphics card. So, we're going to have just a little bit more fun, and it got me thinking, global illumination back to performance, will it actually make a difference or not? Because the results of the last one were just so abysmal, I wanted to give it a shot. Like, maybe I changed too many things, that kind of thing. So again, no upscaling, no DLSS this time again. Did give the lighting a break. I gave global illumination performance instead of quality focus. And you'll note the frames went up a little bit. This is playable depending on what you're doing. Again, if it's looking this rough on the frames, like a steady 60 is usually what you want to try to aim for at the minimum. You know, and then you make understandings if there's like 6,000 enemies on the screen or something like that for a mission or for whatever you're doing or PvP. But then, like, you know, when you're at your own base, standing there with just a couple of machines in front of you, you know, not even being able to get 60 frames is pretty rough. Especially on a PC. So I have heard people say that on console they get 45, and that's, you know, not too bad depending on the kind of game, especially a good looking game like this. If you're more tolerable to frame lower but still keep your quality look without all the fancy tech, great. Note the lighting differences, you know, again, is one of the biggest things. We're playing a game of inches here, you know, where the game itself, the textures look about the same, but the lighting, the shadows, the reflections, they are a very high cost thing. So when a card is trying to do this raw without the help of all the upscaling stuff, this is what it looks like, even when you have global illuminations at the performance. That blur, by the way, I'm not doing that. It's in the benchmark. I think it's just for style and effect. Changing the focus from the character running into the sharp, the shallow depth of field to the ornithopter. Again, the sandworm is the highest performing area, nearly hitting 60s, in the mid 50s for the most part. You know, I'm not trying to sandbag the game or anything. I'm trying to be fair to it. Okay. So, one more test. And if you stuck with me through this and didn't just jump to the character creation and the chapters, great. Thank you for sticking around. And thank you to my long-term subscribers for being here with me for all this. If you haven't subscribed, please consider doing so. But more accurately, for the long-termers and the folks that stick through these videos, I really do appreciate it. And I am always open to feedback in the comments. If I've gotten too deep in the weeds here, let me know. This is 1440 on a final run, and 1440 is going to look a little weird because this is on a 4K monitor. You'll need like that letterbox bottom, top, that kind of thing. A little bit stretched kind of feel. But look at the frames and look at some of the lighting and some of the other things going on. Pretty good. Pretty good. Pretty usable. And if 1440 is looking like this, 1080p is probably not far behind. I will admit, I didn't run a test on that. But if you don't have the luxury of all the fancy upscalers, and you have a 1440p monitor, or you want to run at 1440p, it's more than satisfactory. So the issue is only going to be really big when you're at 4K. If you have a graphics card, like mine in the 4070 Ti series. Or comparable. There's so many different graphics cards nowadays and issuings of them. So one of the things I did notice is the player base that we were just at. It seems like a lot of wasted space in there. I'm curious if you can lay it out yourself, or are they modules you like walk up to each piece and they have to be attached? Is there going to be containers laying all over the place of like stuff? You know, because that's what players do. We have storage space. I did like the garage implemented underneath the main base. That was a nice touch. But anyway, the city itself I'm fine with. It really doesn't matter how efficient it is on use of space. It just means it should have a need to go there and an easy way in and out. So the many landing pads are a nice touch. Giant sandworms trying to eat you notwithstanding when you leave, right? Actually, this is pretty deep into the deserts of Arrakis, because the simulation they show here, there's actually a spice mining vehicle in the background. But yeah. Look at them frames. I do think the desert one was pretty pre-rendered though. Okay, changing gears a little bit, we're going to go into character creation.
Approach, prisoner. Show yourself, child.
In here, you can make yourself a character that will be saved to your computer, and then you will be able to load it in once the game is out, or additional demos are out or whatnot. It is interesting, once you make a character on here, it's on the front screen where you run your benchmarks at. It's not in the benchmark though, as far as I could tell. Some of the things that are in here are a little in the weeds. There is a lot of focus on like facial scars, face tattoos, hairstyles, the usual stuff, as well as your height, chest size and things, arms and legs that are in here as well, and the usuals, right? You can toggle the attire so you can have either an outfit or underwear on if you're just trying to see exactly what it actually looks like. I didn't think that would have been necessary. However, because of the type of outfit the characters are wearing, it's like blocking the view of the most of the body. You will actually probably find yourself toggling. Before you get too deep into the changes of skin colors and eye colors and everything else, voices, understand that the minute you do all that, you will and you change your preset at the bottom of the screen, Z and C at the bottom there, you will lose all those settings. So it'll ask you, it'll warn you like, hey, do you want to reset essentially from scratch? It'll go back to defaults. So I would recommend going through the presets just at least once. Go through the carousel of presets, and you'll see all the options of the men and women that are on there, and the different, you clearly the different house influences, the different planets they come from, the worlds they come from. I would say that there's a pretty good selection. There's going to be people that are really out there. In this game, the Harkonnens and the Harkonnens are in the game still. They're still here, and Atreides is still good to go as well. So you're dealing with this alternate timeline where, don't quote me on the word alternate, but they're dealing with a timeline where both these major houses that we know from the books and the movies are in, and it is a little interesting to see that. It's going to be a little jarring, I think, if they are allowed to be in the same cities. These houses that really don't get along too well. But you did see in the benchmark some of these different groups, different characters that are clearly influenced from where they're from. So you can take a preset that looks like it's from some other planet, background, influence, etc., and you can use the different styles and hairstyles and tattoos and everything else you can imagine that normally would be reserved for that. I'm noting here that there is a bit of pixelization on the arm tattoos, and then on the facial tattoos and such, there you can seem to be able to put whatever kind of tattoo you want on any one you want. Also, any character can get makeup if that matters to you. More customization's good, whatever. All these different things you can do. Tattoos to your heart's content, changing all these different things. I didn't see anything that was really jaw-dropping to me. There wasn't a lot of, there was some adjustments for the face, but it would have been interesting to be able to take the cheekbones and move them around, and the brow and everything, heavily move it. You can move it a little bit, it seemed like, on some of the settings, but it's good enough. I mean, there's a lot of customization in here, and I think you'll find a character you'll be happy with. And remember, most of the time you're going to be pretty heavily covered up if you're wandering through the sands of Arrakis, or in space, or whatever they're going to send us in this game. So the real character development, aside from making the character your own and having fun with it, is the next stage of character development. But I want to show all the presets, which once again I recommend going through this first before you get real deep into any of this, and pick someone you like and kind of build from there, or get ideas. The attire toggle, like I said, it's just this one outfit, which is a terrible outfit when you're trying to build a character, and underwear, and that's the only two options. Yeah, I know it's a Dune appropriate attire, but it is not helpful when you're trying to build a character. So anyway, let's get on with it with my Bene Gesserit character I was working on.
Then I will sift your words for... Where were you born? The machine world. They skirt dangerously close to breaking the prescriptions of the Butlerian Jihad. The Order of the Imperium is rooted in the Farfaluches. A place for every man, and every man in his place. Where is your place? Did you give bad advice? Or make a bad deal? To be close to power is to walk the knife's edge. You had a mentor in your youth, trained by one of the schools. Who was your mentor? Yes, I have heard of our sisters giving training outside of the chapter house. It is frowned upon. The test is almost complete. Have you spoken truth? Come here. Kneel. Put your hand in the box. I hold at your neck the Gomja Bar, the high-handed enemy. Don't pull away or you will die. Great plots are afoot in the Imperium, and the currents of intrigue run deeply. Arrakis is the key, and the Fremen are missing. You will go to Arrakis as our agent, prisoner. You have one task. Find the Fremen. Wake the sleeper. Everything depends on this. Do you understand? Good. You speak truth. But here is the rest of it. There is only one rule. keep your hand in the box and live. Withdraw it and die. An animal would gnaw off its own hand to escape the pain. And we can only be served by humans. Find the Fremen. Wake the sleeper. You will know when it is done.
That's going to do it for this Dune Awakening preview demo type thing. It's just the character creator in a benchmark mode. I do recommend checking it out. You can always download it, use it, make a character, delete the entire thing, and just your characters can be sitting nice and safe, as I understand it. And until the game's out, if you decide to pick it up, or a new demo comes out. Ideally, I'd like to see at least one more demo that's free. But yeah, one more demo would be ideal, one with actual playable content, to give you an idea if this is the game for you, preferably with the character you create in here. That would be a great way, I think, to drum up interest. I'm not affiliated with this project in any way. This is just my kind of fun adventure through it. Thanks for coming along with me on it. Take care.